What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? Why not hand out some midseason awards DBack style?
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillardThomas24diamondportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and it's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. On today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, we will be discussing mid-season DBacks awards, MVP, Cy Young, newcomer, and so much more. Then we'll talk about the DBacks needing to finish off their July schedule strong. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, let's get into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast and let's hand out some mid-season awards. D-back style, we're not going to go through the whole Major League Baseball and hand out the NL MVP and all that. We're only doing Diamondbacks awards today. Figured to be a fun topic to do. All-Star break. Let's talk about who have been the best D-backs players during the first half of the season. And we will start off with the big awards first. MVP of the D-backs. I'm going to have to give this one to Ketel Marte, the most valuable player for the D-backs this season, the only all-star representative for the D-backs this season. And I'm not talking about the all-star game at all in this podcast. I don't think you guys really care about the all-star game. I don't know who the all-star game is for. There's a ton of podcasts talking about how we need to revamp the all-star game, making new rules. Go listen to another podcast for that. I'm not going to talk about the all-star game on this podcast. I've definitely broken down how to make the all-star game better on my podcast in years past. So go check out an archive podcast of Locked on D-backs. We will not be recapping all-star festivities on this game or on this podcast. But Ketel Marte, D-backs MVP, only all-star representative, finished the first half with a fantastic slash line of a 292 average, 877 OPS, 19 home runs, and 57 RBIs. He is top 10 in the National League in home runs, and he is crushing it from the RBIs perspective as well in terms of driving in runs for this D-backs team after not doing that in a big way last season. 82 RBIs. He was good, but we knew there was another level he could tap into. His career high in RBIs was 92 back in 2019, where he finished fourth in MVP voting. I made a prediction on the podcast yesterday saying I believe Ketel Marte is going to finish the year top 5 in MVP voting. And it's because he had such a fantastic first half of the season. He's been a two-way player. He's come through in clutch situations. Ketel Marte, career highs in exit velocity. Like, he's done everything offensively, defensively, late game situations, being a leader in the clubhouse. Ketel Marte has definitely been the MVP for the D-backs this season, with an honorable mention going to Christian Walker, who is his running mate and having the second best season, I think, of any everyday player for the D-backs. Cy Young for the D-backs this season. We did awards after the first 50 games of the year. I definitely at that time gave this award to Zach Gallen. But currently, I have to give this award to Brandon Pfaadt, who has been there all season long, the only member in the rotation to not go on the injured list. And he has stepped up in a big way with all the injuries to the rotation, with Monty going down and being hurt, and Erod never making a start, Merrill Kelly only making 4 starts, Zach Gallen on and off the injured list. Brandon Pfaadt has stepped up in a big way, top 10 in innings pitched. He's carried a large workload for the D-backs this season. He has greatly improved his pitch command and his movement on his pitches, and he looks like a way better pitcher than what he was last season, where every start it felt like he was giving up 2 to 3 long, loud home runs. This season, not the case, has cut down the home run rate drastically from where he was last year. Also, really good walk rate. Overall, the whip 1.156. Brandon Pfaadt is having himself a really good season after being up and down as a rookie. But considering all the injuries to the rotation and the role Brandon Pfaadt has had to fill this season, he's definitely the D-back Cy Young Award winner. And yesterday on the podcast, I made a prediction that I think he could finish top 10 in Cy Young voting at the end of the year. And I still believe in that prediction. An honorable mention for this award, Justin Martinez, who turned heads in the first half of the season. I believe he should be an honorable mention for D-back Cy Young. No Zach Gallen as honorable mention, as he dealt with injuries and did not finish the first half of the season strong. Best newcomer, I'm going to give this one to Jock Peterson, who came in from day one and has just dominated for the D-backs. And the honorable mention here was Randall Grichuk. The reason I gave it to Jock Peterson, because I think he's been a little bit more consistent from the jump. He had that fantastic start to the season. I think Randall Grichuk took just a little bit longer to get going. And overall, I think Jock Peterson, from an offensive standpoint, has been a little bit more impactful than Grichuk. Now, Grichuk does play defense, so that does add a little feather in his cap. But I think Jock Peterson, from a power standpoint, has been pretty good for the D-backs. You probably want even more. You know, he has 13 home runs in 80 games. You feel like you get even more from a power standpoint from Jock, but still 498 slugging, has been great in clutch situations for the D-backs this season, and just overall has produced in every turn, especially against some of the best opponents in baseball, against the Dodgers, against the Padres. I feel like Jock Peterson steps up against the best. And so that's why he is considered the best newcomer for the D-backs, with a very high honorable mention to Randall Grichuk. Then the final award I want to hand out before we get to segment number 2 and hand out a few more awards is breakout player for the D-backs in the first half of the season. This is someone who's already been with the D-backs for a little bit, maybe flown under the radar, maybe has struggled a little bit in the past, but having a breakout season this year. Justin Martinez fits the bill here, who was, oozed the talent last year. We saw him throw 100 miles an hour, fastball, sinker. We know he had the heat and the velocity, but the command wasn't there. A lot of walks, a lot of hard contact. But this season, that has changed. He still gives up probably too many walks, but he's cut down the rate tremendously to where it was last season. Still a very high strikeout rate, and he does not give up a ton of hits. Despite giving up walks, he does not give up a ton of hits, which evens it all out. And he does not give up the long ball at all. Only 1 home run allowed in 41 innings pitched. With the pitching arsenal he possesses and Paul Sewald as a pending free agent, Justin Martinez could definitely be the D-backs closer of the future. He has the stuff. He has the capability, and so far, he's in the midst of a breakout season at only age 22. The sky is the ceiling for Justin Martinez. Now, we'll hand out a few more awards in segment number 2, like who is the D-backs bounce back player of the year? We'll discuss that in segment number 2. But hey, if you're looking for any parts for your vehicle, why not check out eBay Motors? Because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. If you love daily fantasy sports, then I suggest checking out America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, Prize Picks, because with over 5 million active members, it is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast and let's hand out a few more DBacks midseason awards. We handed out the MVP already, Ketel Marte, the Cy Young to Brandon Pfaadt, newcomer to Jock Peterson, and the breakout player to Justin Martinez. I didn't give you my honorable mention for breakout player. That's Brandon Pfaadt, who we discussed as a Cy Young Award winner for the D-backs this season. He is my honorable mention for breakout player. And if Brandon Pfaadt can improve even more in the second half of the season, he could potentially steal breakout player from Justin Martinez and take home the Cy Young Award at the end of the season when we do our awards once again as one of the final podcasts of the regular season. So we'll be on the lookout for Brandon Pfaadt to potentially take the lead over Justin Martinez in the breakout award rankings. But let's get back into it and let's discuss some other awards. Next one, the Bounce Back Award. This is for the player who has struggled for the D-backs last season and is having a pretty good year this year. I'm going to give it to Jake the Rake McCarthy, who was not very good for the D-backs last season after coming off a very strong campaign in 2022 where he finished fourth in Rookie of the Year voting, 23 stolen bases in 99 games, a 283 average. Just really, really impactful night to night. 2023, major disappointment. The speed was still there, of course, 26 steals in 99 games, but the average wasn't there. And most importantly, the slugging fell off a map. The power was not there for Jake McCarthy, and he struggled mightily for the D-backs last year, up and down between the minors and majors, and Jake McCarthy really had to work on his swing. Came in through the offseason, worked on it, and now you look at him, and he has improved mightily against left-handed pitching. It is the reason he's been able to stay in the lineup so much because he is crushing lefties this season, still providing you that speed and the chaos and the havoc on the bases. And then also, he's making defensive plays now, right? Throwing guys out at home, making home run, game saving catches at the wall. Jake McCarthy, super impressive, very dynamic, and I think a lot of fun. Love Jake the Rake, and I think he's been the D-backs' biggest bounce back player in 2024. And then honorable mention, this is a guy who actually wasn't on the D-backs last year, but did struggle last year. I think having a very big bounce back season in 2024. How about a little Jock Peterson, right? 235 average last year, sub 800 OPS. Now his OPS is almost 900 this season. And last year he had 15 home runs in 121 games. This year, 13 home runs in 80 games. Big bounce back season for Jock Peterson. That's why he's my honorable mention. This one is the only sad award that I'm going to give out. Biggest disappointment for the D-backs this season. And this one, sadly, had a few contenders, but I think the answer is obvious. We talk about him on the podcast a lot, and it's always in a sullen voice because Corbin Carroll gets the award for biggest disappointment, and you don't like to give it to him. Everyone loves Corbin Carroll. We're all rooting for Corbin Carroll. We want him to turn his season around. But so far, he's been a major disappointment. You look at WRC plus, bottom 10 in baseball, 212 average, 635 OPS. He still has the speed, right? 18 steals in 94 games. He's still probably going to steal like 35, 38 stolen bases this year. Like from a speed standpoint, whenever he gets on base, he's still going to create chaos and havoc with his legs. But outside of that, night to night, he's not consistent enough. Even when it feels like Corbin Carroll gets hot, it's like 3 straight games of going 1 for 4 or 1 for 5. Like it's still not a lot. had a nice little run to end the first half of the season. So hopefully he can parlay that into the second half. I keep saying for the D-backs to really reach their ceiling, they're going to need their most dynamic player, Corbin Carroll, to finally wake up and turn the season around. And maybe a little all-star break reset can do that for him. How about the award for most clutch D-backs player this season? Oh, but before we get into that one, again, honorable mention for biggest disappointment. You could have went Eugenio Suarez, but I didn't because of his strong finish to the first half of the season, so I didn't do that. Could have went Lourdes Gurriel, but because he had such a strong month in June, didn't go Lourdes Gurriel. Not going Gabriel Moreno, even though he's not having the best Moreno season. I think it's clearly Jordan Montgomery after Corbin Carroll. Huge bust, Mad Bum 2.0 right now, 6.44 ERA and 65 innings pitched, and currently on the injured list. Bad season for Jordan Montgomery. Needs to turn this season around in the second half of the year. How about most clutch D-back player this season from the first half? This one again could have went to a few guys, but I'm going to give it to Ketel Marte. Maybe you think that's too obvious, but Ketel Marte is deserving of the award because there's a lot of guys who are good this season with runners in scoring position. Alec Thomas actually very good at runners in scoring position. So is Grichuk. So is Jock. So is Christian Walker. So is Lourdes Gurriel. Like Gabriel Moreno, all those guys I just mentioned, Jake McCarthy, all of them have over 800 OPS with runners in scoring position, or they have like a 300 batting average, if not both. And so there's a lot of guys who have been clutch with runners in scoring position for the D-backs this season. But if you take a closer look at the clutch numbers and filter it by late and close situations, which means seventh inning or later, and I think 3 earned runs, up or down between either team. Like it has to be a really close situation. I might even be a little bit off on that. It's definitely seventh inning or later, and I do think the score has to be within 3 runs. And when you look at those stats, who comes through in those situations, the guy who's at the top and most consistent, I believe, is Ketel Marte for the D-backs. There's some guys who have put up big numbers in those situations, but no one has come through more repeatedly than Ketel Marte, who leads the team with 11 hits in those situations at 846 OPS and a 289 average. Ketel Marte, from a batting average perspective, in both runners in scoring position and late and close situations and OPS in both of those situations, Ketel Marte has been incredible for the D-backs this season, and that's why he gets my trophy for the clutch D-backs player, with honorable mention going to the DH position for the D-backs, because again, when you do the filters for late and close and runners in scoring position, Grichuk and Jock Peterson are also very high on the list. So I have those two guys as honorable mention for the clutchest D-backs player. I'm combining it to the DH position. And then finally, defensive player of the year, who's been the best D-backs defensive player. I'm going to give this one to Christian Walker, because once again, you just go filter defensive stats for first baseman in the National League, and Christian Walker is going to be number one and probably most defensive stats because he is the best defensive first baseman. Won the Gold Glove the last 2 years, and he probably will win another one this season. Number one in defensive run saved, of course. Ultimate zone rating is also number one. In error runs above average, he's number one. In outs above average, he's number one. In the defense stats on Fangraphs, he's number one. And then what's this one called? Statcast field running value. I don't even know what these stats are. I just know when you go on Fangraphs, I'm just filtering through every stat defensively on advanced fielding stats for first baseman. Christian Walker, number one in every single stat. That's the bottom line. That's the only thing you have to know. I don't know the stat. You don't have to know the stat. Just know Christian Walker across the board is number one. And then honorable mention for defense player of the year for the D-backs, Ketel Marte, because he's not number one in everything like Christian Walker, but he's top three in about everything for advanced stats for second baseman defensively this season. So Ketel Marte, elite, outs above average, defensive run saved. He's been incredible defensively for the D-backs this season, holding it down at second base, and that's why he is my defensive player of the year honorable mention. Now we'll talk about how the D-backs need to finish off their schedule strong in segment number 3. But hey, why not check out Supply House? Because get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free trade master program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right. Let's get back to the Lockdown Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about how the D-backs need to finish off their July schedule strong because the D-backs finished off their first half of the season strong, and why wouldn't they start their second half the same way? We talked about it entering the month of July. Those first 2 weeks entering the All-Star break was going to be a gauntlet for the D-backs, right? It was not going to be easy. And we knew that. We looked at the opponents on the schedule and we said this was probably going to be the D backs' toughest stretch of games all season long. Dodgers, Padres, Braves, just those three teams alone, some of the best in the National League. Yes, the Blue Jays by record isn't good, but they were still super talented. And what did the D backs do? They dominated. They asserted themselves against some of the best teams in Major League Baseball and handled their business. They scored early, they scored late, they had good pitching. Yes, you would have liked Paul Sewald to close out some of those games, but overall, the D backs got the job done and they finished the first half of the season 8-5 and with a really strong record against some of the best teams in the National League. And now the D backs are coming out in the second half of the season. You look at the next four series to end the month of July, and you're saying to yourself, man, that's a cushy stretch of series coming out of the break if you're the Arizona Diamondbacks. And looking at it, right now, you get the Chicago Cubs as the first series out the break. And the Cubs, I mean, they were good to start the season and have kind of been in a little bit of a tailspin over the last, 6 weeks of the year. The Cubs right now, I don't really trust them top to bottom. I've always questioned the Cubs' overall level of talent. They're kind of like the San Francisco Giants to me. They're currently 4 games below 500, 3.5 games back of a wild card spot. That's the first team you see out the break. Second team is the Kansas City Royals, who are having a good season. They are 7 games above 500, a couple games back of the wild card, plus 60 in the American League, second best run differential among all wild card teams. So I do have respect for the Royals, but do I think the D-backs can beat the Royals? Yes. I still don't think the Royals are super talented on paper. They got Bobby Witt, they got Salvi, but I don't think that team is super deep in terms of high level talent. So I definitely think that's a winnable series. Next, you got the Pittsburgh Pirates after that, who are 48-48. Probably will see Paul Skeens in that series. That will be tough for the D-backs, but outside of him and Jared Jones, like the Pittsburgh Pirates, I like some of their talent in the rotation and they got a couple guys in their lineup. But again, overall, I don't think any of these teams that we're going to see out the break are deep in talent. They have a couple of stars each team, a couple guys that you really like, a couple superstars, but not a ton of depth on any of these teams. Same with the Washington Nationals to end the month of July. A lot of guys I like, but not a ton of superstars in terms of depth. And so Cubs, Royals, Pirates, Nationals, first four series out the break. I think that's set up very well for the D-backs. I think it's their softest stretch in the schedule for the rest of the season. If you just go ahead and look at the D-backs schedule for the rest of the year. So I think they need to not get complacent and really take care of these teams coming up. Play with a fire post break like you played going into the break, right? You were so competitive since June 29th. You saw yourselves falling behind in the wild card standings, losing to bad teams repeatedly. But you were able to really go on a run and finish with the best offense in the first half. Keep that going in the second half of the season. Don't fumble the bag and let these teams beat you, because guess what? If you handle your business against these next four opponents, you can be set up really well in the wild card race, because all of a sudden you could be sitting pretty in that second wild card spot potentially if you really take care of business against these next four opponents. And it's a great opportunity for the players who are struggling on the D-backs to get themselves going against maybe not some of the best competition in Major League Baseball, right? So can the Carrolls finally wake up in the second half? Can the Zach Gowns wake up in the second half against some of these more, normal, I guess, teams, not as strong of World Series contenders? Hopefully, the D-backs can do that. If they can handle their business over these next four series, the D-backs should be sitting pretty at the end of the month in that second wildcard spot. And that would make all of us feel really good as D-backs fans entering the month of August. So, D-backs, play your cards right, and you could be sitting firmly in the wildcard race. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy,